It's often said that industry is the skeleton to EVE Online, holding the meat of everything else together. And if that's the case, then mining has to be the backbone, because it is absolutely core and central to everything else. No mining, no industry, and EVE Online as we know it would simply cease to exist. Because of this, mining is one of the most popular career paths in EVE Online, and is surprisingly friendly to both Alpha and Omega clones. You can skill into mining nice and easily as an Alpha pilot, start having fun and making some good, solid ISK. It's also a benchmark starting point if you want to move into any other forms of industry. Ahoy there folks, I'm Captain Benzie, and in today's Catskull Academy I'm going to teach you everything you need to know to get started mining. We're going to be looking at how to get a venture, how to fit it, how to fly it, and how to safely survive high-sec, low-sec, and null-sec. Now, a lot of the tips and tricks I'm going to be showcasing here are based on some basic knowledge from some of the other videos I've already put out. I do recommend you've already had a look at the Day 1 survival guide. I do recommend you've had a look at things like the comparison tool and the fitting tool, and some of the stuff that we've talked about in regards to skills, but we'll go over the basics all in the one place here. I'll link to all of those in the description down below, and of course there is an EVE Online playlist that you can manually search through if you want to look for different videos that may fit what you're trying to do in-game. Of course, I'd be remiss as well for talking about ways to help you without pointing out that Catskull is now in EVE Online as well. If you want to fly with us, then all you need to do is head to our Discord, which is linked in the description down below, and apply there. We'll help you get started. We're looking to provide a friendly starting point for all kinds of new players across all different career paths, and we are eventually looking to get a foothold in nullsec and wormholes at some point soon too, so stay tuned for that. Anyway, with all of that said and done then, let's jump right in. Now, before we go any further in this video, I am running on the assumption that you have already done the agent career missions. If you haven't, this is vital to getting started in EVE Online in general, and I do recommend doing all 4 of them. Ultimately, in order to do these, if you go to your Neocom and open up the agency, or you can use the Alt-M keyboard shortcut as its default, and then from here we can go through to the agency, go to Agents and Missions, and then to Career Agents. This will help you find your nearest schools, or in some cases the ones that you started off as is the case with me here for Hadagogo. There are 3 different career agent stations in each of the main empires. I'll put a link to the article discussing those further down as well if you're trying to find where the closest one to you is. That should give you an idea. Now, I do recommend doing this in the order of Explorer, Industrialist Producer, Enforcer, Industrialist Entrepreneur, and then Soldier of Fortune. And when you do it that way, you'll start to realize why, because a lot of the stuff you learn in some of the earlier ones will help you out in the later. Indeed, in part of the Industrialist Entrepreneur, some of the stuff that you've got from Producer will actually just allow you to auto-complete some of the missions. Now, once you've done the agent career missions and you've got a basic understanding of the career path there, which, by the way, will give you a basic venture and some fittings to use on it, I do also strongly recommend checking out the Air Career Program. Again, we can open this from the Neocom, and it'll bring us to this section here. Now, obviously, it's worth trying to go through all of these, because as you level these up, you'll get a whole bunch of skill points, ships, modules, skill books, and more, but obviously, in this case, we're going to be focusing on the Industrialist one. You'll notice that there are some points here just for completing the career agent missions themselves. You'll earn some of the points, plus a load of ISK and some bits and pieces there. As you go through this as well, as you buy and sell stuff on the market, as you go through resource harvesting and refining as part of those missions, this will all start to complete and earn you some really cool rewards. So it is worth spending some time there, if only because this is going to get you a load of ISK, a load of skills, a load of modules, and a basic venture to start with. So, speaking of that venture, let's talk about it. Now, despite being the most basic of all mining ships in EVE Online, or at least of dedicated mining ships, because nothing stops you stripping a mining laser to any ship you like and going out and shooting a few rocks, ultimately the venture is still an absolute beast. Unlike EVE Echoes, the Venture will see you right the way through almost all forms of mining content. You can use this for asteroid mining, for ice mining, and for gas huffing as well, but those are topics for a separate video. Just understand that just because you're a little bit further into the game doesn't mean you'll stop using the Venture. This is your workhorse, and it is a powerful ship that you absolutely should get comfortable with. Now, if you're looking to find the venture on the ship tree and then to look at some of the alternative options around it, open up the ship tree, look for the ore section here, and straight away, there's the venture as the first ship on it. And you can see this is going to get bonuses from mining frigate. It has some roll bonuses to itself as well. And if you like the mining frigates, you can eventually train into expedition frigates for the prospect and the endurance. Again, that's beyond the scope of this video, but do take a look at them because it may give you an idea of a skill path you'd like to move towards. Eventually as well, you might decide that just mining in a frigate isn't enough for you, and you fancy a mining barge. These are, like the expedition frigates, locked behind Omega, so we won't be talking about them today, but do be aware that they are here. And again, unlike Eve Echoes, all of these do have different purposes. None of them is simply better than the other. They are all used in different situations, and you will want to take that into account when picking which one to aim for. Today, though, we're going to be focusing primarily on the venture. And first of all, we've already discussed how to get one by doing the agent career missions. Those will get you actually a couple of ventures, so you should have some spares. But let's look at skilling into them. Now, skilling into a venture is actually ridiculously easy. If you open up your skill menu, which can be done either by clicking it on the Neocom or pressing Alt and X, if we then head to skill plans at the top left and then into certified skill plans under industrialist, you will find both Alpha Miner and Omega Miner. If you open one of these up, go for the Alpha Miner one first of all, of course, you can then activate this skill plan and start training it. And this will give you all of the skills that you need to get the most out of a venture early on. They're all the things from your spaceship command, mining boosts, all the different things to help you move your ship around, plus a load of things to help you survive a bit better, like shield upgrades. There is a bit of salvaging in here, which if you're absolutely certain you don't want to do, you can take those out to speed things up elsewhere, but do be aware that if you start modifying these skill lists, you may find yourself in a situation where you can't train one of the important later skills because you haven't met the prerequisites. I do strongly recommend just sticking with everything that's on here to start with. Things like the salvage skill, there's very little time. It's 25 minutes with my current skilling here. Ultimately, it's worth having in the off chance you use it at any point in the future. Once you've got Alpha Miner done, if you are looking to go into something a little bit bigger, then absolutely the Omega Miner is a great skill plan to look at there as well. This, as it says here, is how to start off with a venture and then move into something like a procurer for better mining there. So if we open this one, you'll have a lot of these already trained by the time you finish Alpha mining, but you'll notice that a lot of the stuff in here is things like the mining barge skills and some of the more advanced skills that you wouldn't necessarily need as a standard venture pilot. So use those two as your basic skill plans. Now, as a brief moment to talk about here, one of the things I've had a lot of people coming across, especially from Eve Echoes and looking at these skill plans, is why on earth do I need drones? I can't use mining drones on this thing, so why do I need drone skills? This is all about survivability. Make sure you leave the drone skill in. We'll be showcasing that later when we talk about how to safely mine in any security system, including HiSec. Even in HiSec, you will need to be aware of your surroundings and have a little bit of survivability going on. Now let's look at actually fitting the venture. This is a very basic fit. There are some bits that you can upgrade on this, there are some bits you can change around, and there are of course things you can add to it entirely. You'll notice I've left the rig slots on this completely open. It's entirely up to you what you wish to do with those. Now, the basic fit I've gone for here is for someone who's going to be fairly active in their mining. They're going to be keeping an eye on the screen, so they don't need to worry necessarily about things like additional defense. But the low slot specifically here can be changed around. For the high slots, the venture has 3 high slots, only 2 of which can be turrets, and you'll notice that miners are indeed turret points, so you can only ever have 2 miners. Start with a standard miner 1. Once you've got the mining skill trained up high enough, you can swap these to miner 2s to get that little bit more range and a little bit more harvesting of the ores that you're mining at. But what about this third slot? Well, this third slot is kind of up to you. This is what's referred to as a utility high slot. You'll notice it cannot be a turret because we've only got 2 turret hardpoints, and it can't be a launcher either. You can't put scan probes in here, for example. But what you could put in here, if you wanted to, was a salvager. This gives you the option that if you come into an area and you're shooting some of the belt rats, for example, you may be able to salvage some stuff from their corpses. You may be able to, if someone else has come into a low-sec system and lost their ship, you can salvage stuff. Ultimately, it does make the venture more expensive. If you're going into salvage or interested in it, that is an option for that third slot, but to keep things nice and cheap and focused on just the mining, I've just gone for the 2 mining lasers in the top slots there. It should also be noted that despite them being called mining lasers, they do not get any bonuses from things like energy skills and energy turret skills. You only have mining skills applicable to these. The Venture then has 3 mid slots, and the first of these you'll probably want to do is some maneuverability. I've gone for a 5 meganewton micro warp drive here. I've actually gone for a YT8, a compact one, because this just fits in a little bit easier. You can go for a standard micro warp drive too, but be aware that a standard micro warp drive, 5 meganewton micro warp drive, but be aware that is going to eat into your CPU and your power grid quite a bit. You may need to train up some skills for that. I do go for the compact one because it's just a little bit easier to cram in with some of the lower skills. The next thing on the list is a medium shield extender. Now again here I've gone for the FS9 Regolith compact shield extender. It's a little bit more expensive, but it's easier to fit to the ship. Being compact, it has lower stat requirements. I strongly recommend getting shield extenders on here, and the fact that you can fit a medium shield extender means that's arguably what I would go for. If you decide that you have to kind of sacrifice something like a survey scanner or the low slot module, whatever you choose to put in there, that's up to you, but do try and get a medium shield extender in there as quickly as possible alongside some propulsion. I do see people using afterburners early on with this as well. I personally find that that means that just takes too long to get across a mining belt. I would rather use a micro warp drive, cycle it when I need to, just make sure you switch it off when it's not in use, and learn to manually control your ship as well. As you approach another asteroid on the other side of a belt, don't be afraid to just turn your ship's engines off and drift the last bit of that distance. Eventually you will get into the habit, you'll get into sort of an understanding. Through practice, you'll learn the inertia of your ship and thus when to switch off to arrive at certain ranges from a target. The third mid slot, again, this is kind of an optional. I like to have a survey scanner in here because when I'm in a belt, I can scan and see which of the asteroids actually have the most stuff left, so I can focus on those. It's really annoying to, move all the way out to an asteroid, lock onto it, start mining only for 30 seconds later, that asteroid to just disappear because it's now finished. This allows you to select the bigger, juicier asteroids and focus on those if you've only got a certain amount of time that you're going to be mining. Now, the low slots are where things get a bit controversial, and I would argue there are 3 different options here for most people. There are probably more options, and if you've got something you think works better there, please let me know in the comment section down below. I'm sure other people would love to read your thoughts and opinions on this as well. Genuinely, let's help each other out. Now, the 3 that I would recommend, if you're going to be mining somewhere that's relatively safe, something like a mining laser upgrade can be an excellent way of doing this. If you're going to be a little bit more attentive to the screen, you think it's a bit of a quieter system, you can probably get away with a mining laser upgrade just to increase the amount of ore that you actually harvest. That's a great way to go because it's just increasing your yield, and increased yield means faster mining, means more ores per hour, right? That's the theory behind this one. That said, inertial stabilizers are also an excellent option here. Inertial stabilizers will reduce your align time. Remember, the align time shown here, this always rounds up. So I've got a 4.68 second align time. That means I will align and warp on a 5-second tick. If I reduced this down to 4.01 seconds, that is still a 5-second tick. So bear that in mind when fitting different inertial stabilizers or nanofiber structures in order to get yourself below a number. If adding one of those does not take you down into a new whole number, so if I don't go from 4.68 down to 3 point something, it is pointless to fit. Bear that in mind. The final thing that I do see some people put into these low slots are damage control modules. Damage control modules increase the resistances of your shield, armor, and structure, and mean you take a little bit less damage when something shoots at you. This is particularly useful if you got into a lower sec system and you've got some of the more nasty belt rats around, but certainly, again, it's one of those. I personally think that if you're fitting that for PvP, if you're worried about someone jumping into your system, if you can handle the belt rats just fine without a damage control, I'd rather go for the mining laser or the faster align. The faster align is going to help you get out if someone does jump into the belt and try to kill you, another player that is, but ultimately the mining laser is still good if you can't either drop a full number or if you're being a bit more attentive and using things like D-scan, which we'll talk about in just a moment. So which of those 3 low slots you go for is entirely up to you, and again, I'm certain that other people have additional low slot modules that they like to consider and might even recommend for the low slots. Now you'll notice I haven't got anything in the rig slots. There are options that you can put here. I think these are a bit more advanced and do just increase the cost of the venture if you're not paying attention to it. A common one here are things like core defense operational solidifiers to increase the size of your shields, or things like small EM or even medium EM shield resistance rigs and things like that. Again, just to add a little bit of extra survivability. My personal trouble with this is I find that if I'm being shot at by another player, then they're probably going to have scrammed me down anyway, so I can't run. Having additional survivability doesn't help all that much if you're already held in place and you can't flee, and you can't really do anything else back unless you've got corp mates or fleet members very close by who can assist. It's very much here and there. It's entirely up to you how you choose to fit beyond. This is what I would consider the basic skeleton of a venture. From there, it's entirely up to you. Now, the final thing to talk about before we undock this is the ability to fit drones into a venture. Now here you can see, because I am in Gallente space, I'm using hobgoblins. Gallente rats, Serpentis rats, have a weakness to thermal and kinetic damage, therefore I'd recommend either hobgoblins, or I almost said wasps. It's not Vespers, it's not wasps, it's the other one whose name I can't remember off the top of my head now, the Caldari drones. If you're in Minmatar space and thus your belt rats are going to be angel ships, then having warriors that can do explosive damage is a good option. If you're in a Mars space and up against stuff that has electromagnetic weakness, then going for acolytes is going to be an option as well. You can fit 2 small drones here. This is why you do need the drone skill up to at least 2, so that you can use 2 drones. You need to be able to use 2 drones to get the most out of this. You're going to be using some drone skills, obviously later on, once you've got some of your harvesting abilities up. Increasing the damage of your drones and their survivability, also really useful, because it's going to help you take care of those belt rats just that little bit faster. Now, on the subject of that, let's showcase how to actually use this in action in order to survive whilst you're out mining. Before we even undock, first thing you're going to do is check your fit. Make sure that everything's in place, make sure you've got your drones all there and that they're nice and repaired and ready to go. Make sure that everything you need is fitted. Always double check your fit. You'd be amazed how many stories I hear of people losing a ship because they thought they had fitted something but hadn't. The second thing you're going to need to do is work out where you even want to go to begin with. Now, this is where the agency comes very much in handy again. We can go to the Neocom, click the agency, or use the default keybind of Alt-M. And now once we're in the agency, we're going to go to the top tab here of Resource Harvesting. We're then going to go to Asteroid Belts. This will allow you to search for asteroids anywhere, basically, within New Eden. And you can use the filters on the left here to help you. If you're looking at just mining for the sake of mining, then absolutely you can see the belts in your current system here on the right hand side, and ultimately it'll show you what resource types are available. Remember, in EVE Online, not all ores are available to all empires. You'll find that some types of ore are not available in the space you are in, and thus if you need those, you may have to jump many systems across in order to find them. An example of this for me here in Gallente space is, for example, Kernite. You'll notice here that these are all showing Gallente systems, all one jump away because I've got any distance, any security, and any type. But what if I went into here and I changed this to Kernite? Immediately you'll notice that none of these are in Gallente space anymore. These are now within Caldari space, and they are all within low-sec systems. That is something you need to pay attention to because your security status is obviously going to matter in terms of Concord responses and how survivable that's going to be for you. If you want Kernite though, you'll see that here in this system here, Tanolan, Asteroid Belt 1 has both Kernite and Pyroxeres in it, and I can scroll through these and see if any of these are any different. I imagine most of them will be very much the same. Kernite and Pyro, so you can kind of choose what you want there. It also lets you know what enemies you're going up against. You can read up a bit about the faction here, have a look at things like statistics and how you're doing in regards to them, but most importantly is just to note what type of pirates they are, therefore you can change your drones. If I'm going up against Guristus pirates, then using thermal drones or kinetic drones is going to be okay. If I were going up against angel drones, I'm going to want to change to explosive, so on and so forth. You can choose that as you see fit. Now, ultimately, if you are absolutely certain of something you particularly want, for example, let's have a look at, let's keep it on Kernite here. If I wanted this to be in high sec only, it'll tell you that's simply not possible. Kernite only spawns in low sec, so we have to go to at least low sec for that to start appearing. If you're out further away though, it's kind of up to you, and you can try this with different ores as well to get an idea of different distances. Any distance within 10 jumps within specific regions, so on and so forth, and you can kind of pick any single one of these. So look, imagine we're after Scordite. Unfortunately, Scordite is right here in this current system. We can focus on that. Now, with this available, we can right-click here, I think. No, we can't. We're just going to undock and move straight towards it. So, yes, we can add a bookmark. That's what I'm looking for. We can click to add a bookmark here, and this will add that particular bookmark to your asteroid belts. But we're just going to undock for the time being and showcase this in action. I'm going to close this window because the undocking animations from a station like this are just so cool. Once we are out in space, we are going to reopen that agency tab. It should be still on the same place, and we can just warp to location. Now, of course, you can also just set your overview up to have mining available. Ultimately, that's another topic for another video, but if you're in a corporation that uses a particular overview, they may already have a mining one that you can sort of just warp to instantly here. That said, if you're looking for specific ores, knowing exactly which belt to do it via the agency is really going to help. Now, once we arrive into a belt here, you can see I've got another player here, say hi to Captain Curry. He's going to be doing some mining here. I can now change to my mining tab and look for a particular ore that I fancy. Dense Feldspar, 21 kilometers. Cool, so let's look at this one. We're going to set an approach to that, or we can use Q as our shortcut. Move in a little bit closer. I'm going to keep an eye on this one. Now, I'm going to say no to joining fleet. Normally, I'd recommend that you do join a fleet like this, but with that highlighted, as we close in, I can hold Control, click on it to lock on. Again, normally I would use a micro warp drive, but I'm kind of close enough that it's not such an issue here. And we're going to move up until the point where you're in range. You can mouse over your turrets and it'll tell you what range they're within, 12 kilometers for these ones. So now that I'm within that, I'm just going to stop my ship by clicking on the little minus symbol down here, stop, and then start mining. Again, I can either click or I can press F1 and F2 because of the situation they're on there, and start mining. Now, when you're mining, you'll see that this circle starts to complete, and it's on completion of that circle that more ore is harvested out of the asteroid and dropped into your mining hold here. If you're using something other than a Venture that perhaps doesn't have a mining hold, it'll go straight into the standard inventory, but as you can see, these are often very small, whereas the mining holds are a lot bigger, but obviously mining holds can only hold ore. Now, whilst we're sitting here harvesting this, I'm going to talk to you all about safety. I was kind of hoping that there'd be some drones in here that we could properly showcase, but let's do a quick demonstration on how to use your drones. If you look down here, you'll have a drone bay window. You'll see how many drones are in your bay. You can see their structure, their armor, and their shield in that order here on the right-hand side, and how many drones are in space. Now, I have the skills to put up to 4 drones into space, but the Venture only has the bandwidth to control 2 of them. So, what I'm going to do here is, essentially, I'm going to press Shift and F. And by pressing Shift and F, you'll see that the drones that are in the bay now launch out into space, and there they are, whizzing around me. Once you have a target, like an enemy ship, you can lock onto those. Again, control click them in the overview. I like to switch back to a combat overview I have so I can explicitly see if a rat has appeared. I can lock it, I can then press F, and those drones will shoot off and start to attack that target. This should allow me to ultimately keep mining the way I am. You'll notice that I don't orbit while mining. If you're orbiting while mining, it may take you longer to align to your safe point and get out of there. Sitting still guarantees you the minimum amount of investiture to actually head off to a target. So, whilst I'm mining here, what I'll be doing is I will sit to combat, I will tap onto whichever station I'm going to aim for, so that I can just click up here onto dock and warp away. I will be watching this for new belt rats to spawn. I can then target them by pressing F and killing them with my drones. If you start taking damage, you may decide at that point you want to quickly mouse over your asteroid, hold W to orbit, and then click, and you'll start to orbit, which will just give you a bit of speed and a bit of angular velocity to make you a little bit harder to hit. Worth just bearing in mind. Now, once you're done with the drones, because remember, if you warp off and leave your drones in space, the drones will be left behind. Shift and R will bring those drones back to your drone bay. Now, when mining, I like to sit here parked like this with my target available so I can dock at a very, very quick click, and if a belt rat spawns, I can just go Shift F, I can then lock the new belt rat, I can hit F to target that belt rat, and as soon as they are all dead, I immediately press Shift and R to drop them back into my hold. That way, I'd never accidentally forget my drones. If you're interested to see how much of an ore here you actually have as well, you can also just right-click and stack all. Quick little tip there for you. But otherwise, sit here, mine away quite comfortably. I'm in a fairly safe area, things should be pretty good, but I do also like to just take my D-scan, put that all the way out to 360, and keep scanning. And every now and then, probably on every 10 seconds, just hit D-scan here and keep an eye out for enemy ships. If there are other players in combat vessels, that's a dead giveaway. Certainly keep an eye out for scan probes showing up here as well. This is specifically important in low-sec or null-sec. If you're in a low-sec system where faction warfare is a thing, then yeah, even more so. Keep that scan going, and just watch out for any form of scanning probes to show up there. The second that you see scanning probes, that means someone is trying to lock your position down, at which point I would just hit that warp away and dock up. Don't take the risks. For the time being, though, I can just keep hitting either clicking the scan, or I can just press V and scan manually as well. But it does ask me to click a target, so it's V and then click space, and it'll do it in the full 360 degrees around me. If you know that an enemy could be coming from a particular way, then obviously you can narrow your D-scan, but for the time being, setting it up like this, 4 astronomical units and scan, nice and easy, means someone who wants to get in a little bit close to you, you're going to see those probes automatically pop on here when you scan, and the second you see those, you hit dock. So, I'm just going to wait for this now to finish off this next little bit here. You can see I'm mining a decent amount of dense Veldspar. I can then go and reprocess it or hand it off to someone in my corporation who does reprocess and has better skills than I do right now. Or I can sell it on market or do whatever the heck I fancy with it. But here we are. Those are now about to finish, so watch the Veldspar over here. Oop, there we are. I'm now going to hit dock, and we are going to immediately fly back. And I can hit dock instantly because my drones are already in my bay. Don't sit there with your drones out. Just manually, just letting them fly around in a cloud around you. It's not scaring anyone off. It's not doing anything. All it does is mean you can't hit that dock before you have to start slamming and hammering that Shift and R in order to pull your drones back, wait for them to dock up, then fly away to safety. Ultimately, I've actually come to the wrong station here, but oh well, it's a station, and I'd rather be docked at the wrong station than out in space and being shot at, right? Hopefully that makes some sense for you. Anyway, folks, that's about everything to talk about in regards to the act of mining. If you're looking for information on things like reprocessing and constructing stuff, I will have videos for that soon. Again, do take a look at the skill plans there for ideas on some of the skills that will help with the reprocessing, although I believe some of the alpha miner skills do include some basic reprocessing skills for you as well. Do look at the new ships that you might want to go up to. I'm currently training towards a prospect because I really like that ship, but even then you might find that the Venture is just the ship for you, and you just want to max out everything there is about this one vessel and use that as your mining workhorse of choice. Let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comment section down below, and if you have found this video useful at all, if you've learned any new tricks, you owe me a like at the very least. It really helps the channel out, really helps me keep making content like this. You can also head across to Patreon, pledge to support there. I've got a PayPal tip jar open if you want to help keep me making content that way, and if you fancy some Captain Benzie merchandise for EVE Online, you can head to my Redbubble merchandise store, linked in the description as well. Otherwise, folks, come join us in Catskull. If you found this useful, let me know in the comment section down below. Happy sailing, and see you in New Eden!